the ever popular IBC tote. These things have been trending in Firewood for the last few years as a means to move and store, mostly store firewood. The IBC tote, or cage, or basket, some people, if you're fancy like Adam at Hometown Acres, he likes to call these baskets. If you've been around some firewood, you've probably seen, or you may even use these yourself. I have found what I originally thought I was going to use these mostly for was storing firewood around my wood yard here and having it accessible and able to move it around. Generally, that is what a lot of people I think use them for, is like long-term storage. Like you split your wood right in to the tote, you put it somewhere, you let it season, you pick up the tote, you sell it, or you take it to where you're burning it. But what I have found is that I use these totes way more for just moving wood around and temporarily storing or putting wood in them. And I'll explain that in a little bit. Originally, I got these totes a couple years ago from a few farmers that my dad knew. And the price was right. And by that I mean they were basically giving them away. You can still find deals like this nowadays, but a lot of places when you look for these IBC totes, they are priced pretty high. I've seen them all the way up to, like, I think even like $175 a piece. So this is how a lot of people use them, and this is how I originally started utilizing these totes, is I would put wood, I would stack the wood in there, and now these totes have been sitting here for over a year, just seasoning. So I've got 2 over here, there's 1 behind there, I've got 5 totes right here. I do have a couple other ones sitting right up there with the caps on them. And then I have 1 or 2 more in a couple other places around the wood yard. In total, I only have, I think, 12 or 13 of these IBC cages, totes, baskets, whatever you want to call them. So like I said, that was my original plan, was to get these, split wood into them, and then just season and store the wood. And then when I want to either take it up to the roadside stand to sell it, or take it into the boiler, I could just go pick up the tote and move it to where I needed it. The problem, well, not the problem, but the issue for me is with the amount of wood that I burn and the amount of wood that I go through with the roadside stand, I would need a lot of these totes. I mean, we're talking maybe 100 if I were to be able to put all the wood that I would need to in these totes. And then it's just a matter of space. I know a lot of people will stack them. I'm not a fan of stacking them too high, just because back here, if the ground settles or if little boss man is back here with his friends playing on them, climbing on them, I just wouldn't want them to tip over. So what I ended up doing with these totes is I ended up actually just using them to move wood around. I would move wood up to the roadside stand, refill it, bring the half empty, third empty, whatever was left in the tote, I would just bring that back to the wood yard and then have it ready to put more wood in from the stack to take up to the roadside stand. I've also started making bundles ahead of time, putting them in the tote that I can easily then just pick up, take up to the stand, refill the bundles. And I've also been using them to just take wood into the boiler to keep burning off of these big piles back here. So what I have found is what works best for me, and again now this is just for me in my situation, I have found that these totes work best for short-term storage and just moving wood around, taking it from the splitter over to a spot and even stacking out of it. So yes, letting the wood fall into the tote, then taking the wood out of the tote and stacking it in a stack, or taking wood up to the stand or up to the boiler. What doesn't work for me is the long-term storage, because once I fill these things up, then they're just sitting somewhere and I'm not able to actually utilize them. And I know that may sound kind of crazy, but to me, these things are way more useful for moving wood around and taking wood from one place to another and then having that tote available to use again. So now if you're someone who only uses a couple cords of wood a year, or you don't use that much wood and you have these IBC totes, that might work great for you to split your wood, put it in the tote, let it sit. When you need it, go get it, and that's done. You don't have wood to move around. But for me, like I said, I have just found that these IBC totes, they actually are way more useful moving wood around and not necessarily storing the wood in them. So I was just back here today. I've got a couple things I need to do. I got to refill one slot in the stand. I got to take some bundles up there. I also have to take some wood into the boiler. So I was just thinking about that, how all three of those tasks that I'm doing today all involve utilizing the IBC tote, but generally not in the way that most of them are typically used. Like, I'm not putting the wood in there and keeping it in there for a long period of time. I'm just using 3 IBC totes today to do specific tasks, and then once that task is done, the wood will be out of the tote and it'll be empty, sitting here empty, until I need to take more wood into the boiler or move some more bundles or refill the stand. Or even take one over to the splitter, split some wood into it, bring the tote over to where I'm going to stack the wood, and then stack the wood out of it. So I just thought I would touch on that, and I know a lot of people out there are getting into these and they're using them, and I think a lot of people are using them just for storing long term. So maybe, you know, if the situation fits you, maybe take a look at using your IBC totes in a different way, and just in a way to move wood around, not necessarily take it somewhere and let it sit. Because I just think these IBC totes, I think they're great. They're very useful, they're very handy, and I found they're very handy when you use them, like I said, just to move stuff around. Short term, move it, be done with it, reload it, use it again. So if you use IBC totes in your wood yard, let me know down in the comments if you use them mostly for long-term storage and seasoning of the wood, or if you're kind of like me where you'll bop around with a couple and move wood around from splitter to stack, or bring it into your house, bring it into your woodshed. Let me know down in the comments. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Stay safe, have fun, and be cool.
I've been a real bad boy on the town all night.